Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Scott, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair Lady Maloney. This is a fantastic hearing, and you all are very informed. But what I want to start out with, you all are aware that the Securities and Exchange Commission's 2018 annual report estimates that the 2017 case of Kokich versus the SEC Supreme Court decision held that discouragement is a penalty and subject to a 5-year statute of limitations. But they say that because of this, it has caused the Securities and Exchange Commission to forego as much as $900 million in discouragement of ill-gotten gains. Is that accurate? I mean, I'd like to make sure everybody agrees on that point before I go further.
I do.
Okay, now do you agree that this is because certain fraud schemes may run for years prior to the discovery? Everybody agree with that? Mr. Vollmer?
I agree that's one of the possibilities, but my written statement points out that there are other reasons for delayed enforcement, not just from the concealment. And no, I do not agree with the $900 million figure.
Well, let me ask you.
I think it's entirely suspect number.
If you agree with Mr. Thomas, and in Mr. Thomas's testimony, he points out to the paradox that's created by this decision, stating that this decision rewards violators who are good at hiding their misconduct. Mr. Thomas said, do you agree, Mr. Vollmer?
I agree that a natural consequence of statutes of limitations is that some violations that are concealed for very long times can go unremedied. The question is whether that is a severe enough and substantial enough problem to alter the general rule of a 5-year statute, and I say the evidence has not been presented to us.
Right. I got on a short period of time, but I want to get to these points. It brings to light, the reason I'm going through this, 2 issues. First, the need to clarify whether the SEC has discouragement authority. And second, the need to ensure that our regulators are equipped with the tools they need to effectively police our markets and root out bad actors. Now, Mr. Thomas, defend your comments, and I think Mr. Vollmer will agree with you. Won't you, Mr. Vollmer?
I will agree if I possibly can.
Yeah.
I like Andy very much, but I hope he'll agree.
Yeah.
To go to one of the points that you made, Congressman Scott, is the SEC's estimate of $900 million as a consequence. I actually think that number is low, and I'll just give you one example. In the Merrill Lynch case, I represented 3 whistleblowers. It resulted in the SEC recovering $415 million. And that period of misconduct was relatively consistent, and it was more than 5 years. I believe that the monetary sanctions in that case would have been halved if the Kokesh ruling had occurred before that. And that's just one case, $200+ million would have been disappeared from them.
And Ms. Bellianque.
Belliconia.
Wonderful. I'm sorry, I'm bad on names. You spoke very eloquently on this. Would you like to add something to this? I saw you shaking your head.
We haven't been given any explanation where the 900 figure comes from, so I understand both Mr. Vollmer and Mr. Thomas. It sounds big, it also sounds sort of right. I would side with Mr. Thomas and why the number is kind of low. It's precisely because the SEC has been using tolling agreements extracted from the defendants to toll the statute of limitations, allowing the SEC to complete the investigation. So think of a big case, such as a big FCPA case, Petrobras, which the SEC settled in September of 2018, the disgorgement order in Petrobras alone was $933 million. Much of that was outside the 5-year limitations period. Now, if the period is applied stringently, that amount would be in jeopardy. It wasn't precisely because Petrobras had executed a tolling agreement. It might be a lot less willing to do so going forward.
Right. And finally, Mr. Thomas, you said something in your testimony. You said we're fighting a losing battle. What did you? Yeah, quickly. What did you mean by that?
I mean that the SEC is under-resourced, and they are fighting on multiple fronts in an emerging, growing market. And if they can't when they catch people, get all of their ill-gotten gains, if they can't have significant penalties that lead to real deterrence, then they're going to do what economists would expect people to do. They would assess the risk of detection and the potential consequence and say, I'm going to take that risk.
Okay.
And because it's harder to
Gentleman's
detect.
time has expired. Okay.
Thank you for your courtesy, Chair Lady.
I got a little excited.
Thank you. The